Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this wonderful Thursday afternoon. And in this podcast today, we have a lot of things to talk about. First off, obviously, we're going to be talking about the first game between the Mavericks and the Timberwolves that just happened. It was a very good game. I was watching majority of the game, like from start to finish. It was fantastic. There was a lot of things that I did not expect out of this game, but ended up happening, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then, in the second segment, we are going to talk about how Jalen Brunson was robbed of the All-NBA first team. The All-NBA first teams were selected, so now I'm just going to go ahead and cover everyone that was on the All-NBA teams. Then in the third segment, we're going to cover the Cavs drama yet again because the Cavs recently have fired their head coach. And then in the fourth segment, we are going to talk about Luka Dončić and the possibility of him signing a crazy contract coming into this offseason. We also have a very special fifth segment that I'd like to talk about. So be sure, and I reveal it at the end of the fourth segment. So be sure to stay tuned for up till the end of the fourth segment to figure out exactly what that is. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the Mavericks and the Timberwolves game, which was a very good game. It was very competitive, and it was very fun to watch. I mean, watching Luka and Kyrie is always watching Luka is always a treat, and then watching Kyrie is also just as much of a treat. I mean, I wish Kyrie would have played this much and this well when he was on the Brooklyn Nets, but I digress. So this is the first time in a while that I've seen both of them play very well, like together at the same time. Usually it's been, at least in this postseason, it's been one player that goes off while the other player sort of takes a back seat and allows that player to go off. And that's sort of the dynamic that they have. It's not, I mean, a lot of people like to compare it to how Kyrie was second fiddle to LeBron, but it's not really the same thing. Because when LeBron and Kyrie were doing it, LeBron and Kyrie would both go off at the same time. Like, they had to go off at the same time, otherwise they wouldn't make the finals as many times as they did. Like, that was their only option, and they had to capitalize on every single game that they had, which they did. And part of that might be because of LeBron, but the other part, I mean, the way that they play is very different on the Mavericks than the way that they played on the Cavs. I mean, the set that they run straight pick and rolls most of the time, and obviously, like, the ball can only be in the hands of one person, so it'll be either Kyrie or Luka Dončić running the pick and rolls. They don't really do much off the ball, which, I mean, in my opinion, and honestly in Kobe's opinion, that's not going to win you a championship just relying on one person or two people to just isolate and create the shot for themselves. But these two players that sort of shown that it's definitely possible to make it far. And we've seen the 2018 Houston Rockets make it just as far with the same offensive scheme of having two players run a pick and roll while having the rest of the players space out. And it's worked. Like, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. It works, but only for a time. I mean, we'll have to see how this plays out in, like, if they do make the finals and if they get past the Timberwolves. But the score was really close. Like, the Mavericks, it was 108 to 105, excuse me, and the Mavericks, Luka and Kyrie played very well, but the rest of the Mavericks team, they shot very poorly. I mean, they only made 6 3-pointers throughout the entirety of the game. And the fact that they were still able to win is a little bit concerning for the Timberwolves, because 6 for 25, that is horrible. And most of their points came from inside the paint. Like, for the Timberwolves and how great their defense is, they gave up a lot of shots in the paint. And I was very, very surprised because I thought the Mavericks were going to have to adjust their game plan to try and make Rudy Gobert a non-factor. But they didn't have to do that whatsoever. He was already a non-factor in the entirety of the game when Luka and Kyrie were running a pick and roll. Like, he was, and Shaq and Draymond, they were talking about this over on like Inside the NBA after the game, how Rudy Gobert sort of like he was in no man's land for some reason, and it was a little bit odd to see how like he had no answer for the pick and roll or the lobs that Luka and Kyrie were throwing. And to be honest with you, it seemed like he was just one step behind the rest of the Mavericks and their offense. Like, he would go up and hedge, but he would just be too slow to recover and get back on the person that's throwing the lob. It's really concerning, especially if you're the Timberwolves, because it's like one of your most valuable assets on the defensive side of the court is already proving to be a non-factor. So how is this going to play out for the rest of the series? I'm pretty sure, I have faith that they'll be able to adjust. I mean, they've adjusted to Jokic and his game plan and his sort of offense, and they sort of were able to make his life a little bit more difficult. So maybe now they'll adjust to the Mavericks and their offensive scheme with the pick and roll. It will be difficult because of Luka and how good of a playmaker he is, and Kyrie, who's sort of proving himself to be just as good of a playmaker. And another thing that I realize, but I know is going to get pushed under the rug, is Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns' play. I mean, these guys, they're the number 1 and the number 2 option for the team, and they made a combined 12 shots while shooting 36 shots. And that is way less than 50% coming from both of them. I mean, Anthony Edwards was 6 for 16 with only 19 points, 5 for 12 from 3. And then Karl-Anthony Towns was 6 for 20, 2 for 9 from 3. And that is, obviously, that's not ideal for the Timberwolves. But the fact that this game was incredibly close just shows, like, that they can totally win this. They could have totally won this game, and they could have totally won this series. Well, they could totally win this series, had Anthony Edwards or Karl-Anthony Towns have played to, their full potential and how we've seen them play. I mean, I'm surprised that there's no criticism coming in from Anthony Edwards. Like, I'm surprised nobody is criticizing Ant right now, especially after having a bad Game 7 and now having a bad Game 1 to enter this series. Like, and I find it very ironic how these bad games are happening right after he's being compared to Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and saying, oh, he's Michael Jordan's son, this, that, and the other. But this is getting completely shoved under the rug. No one is talking about how they played, and I'm sorry to say it, I mean no disrespect, but they did not play well. They did not play up to the expectations that these players are known to be playing for, like these two specific players. And if they want to win the series, they're going to have to start playing like it. And the only reason why I'm talking about it like this is because if this was somebody like LeBron, if this was Giannis, if this was... Who else gets unnecessary hate from the media for absolutely no reason? If this was Stephen Curry, everybody, and I'm being so serious when I say this, especially in LeBron's case, everybody would be talking about it and everybody would be criticizing that star player. If it's LeBron, if LeBron drops 19 points in a playoff game and goes 6 for 16, do you really think that the media is going to live that down? No, they're not going to live that down. And it's like, the way I see it, if you're going to give one star player that kind of treatment, it should go both ways. which is why I don't really give these types of players that treatment. I'm just bringing this up simply because, like, again, I'm surprised that nobody is talking about it, because if this was LeBron, whole different story. Like, all hell would break loose if LeBron had this kind of performance. And aside from that, it was a really, really close game. Like, it took Luka and Kyrie to drop. Luka had 33 in this game, and Kyrie had 30 in this game. And they were only able to win by 3 points. I mean, that is a very good sign for the Timberwolves, because the fact that you can still allow these guys to, like, have 30 points and still make it close it's pretty good. I mean, granted, they shouldn't allow these players to have this many points, but it's Luka and Kyrie. There's really nothing that you can really do when going up against them. But their offense definitely has to be better. And again, if their offense would have been a little bit better, they would have totally won this game. All they had to do was if each of them would have hit at least just one more shot, they would have won. And another thing that I almost forgot to mention was there was a turning point in the fourth quarter of the game where Karl Anthony Towns, he was going for a putback, and it seemed like a really good putback to me, but it was later overturned and it was called an offensive basket interference. Now, I completely disagree with that call. The shot wasn't going to go in. Like, it was already established the shot wasn't going to go in, and all he was doing was putting the ball back in the hoop. I mean, it wasn't going to go in. The ball, the way that the ball bounced, it bounced up in the air, like, from off the rim, and, like, as it was coming down, and Karl Anthony Towns grabbed it and put it back. I guess it was, like, because, it was still around the rim, which is why they called it. I mean, I get that, but at the same time, no. The shot wasn't going to go in whatsoever, and again, this goes back to the problem that I had with the Mavericks in the previous series, where in Game 6, the foul call at the end of the game, I didn't like that foul call. I mean, I understand why it was called, but I just didn't like it because the game essentially was decided by the refs, and I genuinely do not like it when the game is decided by the referees. It should be decided by the players, no ifs, ands, or buts. Unless it's the Eagles holding on against the Kansas City Chiefs. Only reason. Only moment where I believe that the refs won the game. And I love it. So, but aside from that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about the All-NBA teams that were just announced. So I will be right back after this short break, and stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. My bad, I have something in my eye right now, and it's really bugging me. Alright, so in this second segment, we're going to be talking about the All-NBA teams that were just announced. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker. on every single show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Really helps the show. It makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the second segment where I reveal all NBA teams that were just selected. So let me just go ahead and pull up the images right now. Here we go. So we have the All-NBA first team, and as I alluded to before at the beginning of this podcast, 4 of the 5 players I agree with, but one of them I do not. And I'm sure you guys can pinpoint exactly which one I do not agree with. I mean, Shai, he was second in MVP voting, definitely deserved. Luka, Shai was like top 2, top 3 for the longest time in the season. Same thing with Luka Dončić. I mean, right after the All-Star break, he's always been phenomenal. He's always been phenomenal, but right after the All-Star break, he just broke out. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the one of 2 players to average 30 points per game on 60% shooting from the field. Phenomenal. Absolutely insane. And Nikola Jokic, who obviously won the MVP. All of these players make sense. What doesn't make sense to me is Jason Tatum. I do not understand why this man is on the All-NBA first team over Jalen Brunson. I really do not. I genuinely do not understand why Jason Tatum is over Brunson in this award. I understand, like, Jason Tatum, he was the best player on the best team. Makes complete sense, and they had the 1 seed locked up. All of that makes total sense, and I get it. But Jalen Brunson, from an individual standpoint, is beating Jason Tatum in practically every single statistical category that you can think of. Like, and some people think that team success has to like do with a lot of these rankings and a lot of these awards, and like it should be taken into consideration. But these are like all NBA. This is, to me, the way I see it, it's all NBA teams. It means that it's like the best players at each position and the best individual players, and like judging off of their individual season, because you can make an argument like that Giannis, Luka, Shai, and Jokic had great seasons, better than anyone else at their position. You can totally make an argument for every single one of those players. But with Tatum, I don't see an argument that could be made. And most of it is probably because his Boston Celtics team is very, very good. Even though he's the only Boston Celtic on the All-NBA teams, that doesn't completely undermine the fact that, I mean, his team is fantastic. I mean, 2 players have made All-NBA defensive teams, and Jaylen Brown is incredibly underrated. Well, not really incredibly underrated, but he is underrated in his skill set. He's a very, very good second option. Then there's Kristaps, who's a 7'3" unicorn and is amazing for the Celtics, and is a great floor spacer and a great scorer when he needs to be. And it's like he was basically awarded that position for being the best player on the best team, and I don't like it whatsoever. Especially when Brunson is averaging more points per game, more assists per game, a higher field goal percentage, a higher three-point percentage, a higher free throw percentage, higher box plus minus, and it's just all of these statistical categories. The only thing that Jason Tatum is honestly like over him on in terms of stats is rebounds. And it makes sense because Jason Tatum is a forward. Now, the steals and the blocks, Tatum is averaging more than that, but it's marginal. It's like really, really close. He's averaging 1 steal per game, where Brunson is averaging 0.9, and there goes my phone ringing. I can't stand that. That's great. And blocks per game, which is 0.6, and 0.2. Actually, hold on just 1 second. I will be right back after I go ahead and you know what? Never mind. I'm just gonna go ahead and let that roll, and hopefully it just blows over. But the box plus minus is a significant increase. It's 5.8 compared to 5.1, And it's just Brunson is basically over him in every single statistical category. I don't see why it was chosen. I do not see it at all. So that's basically all that I have for like Brunson and his case for being in the first team. He's obviously on the All-NBA second team, which, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think he should have been on the second team. He should have been on the first team. But at least he's on an All-NBA team. Now, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, and Kawhi being on the second team. The only one that I really have questions about is Kawhi, because in my opinion, I feel like LeBron should have made the second team. Now, it might be a little biased because you guys know how I feel about my glorious king LeBron James, but yes, I don't think Kawhi Leonard should have been on the second team. He did have a great season. I'm not saying that he didn't have a great season, but I just think LeBron and he's the way that he's carried himself and especially his age, I think he deserves the All NBA second team spot. That's just in my personal opinion, but I have no real problem with Kawhi being up there on the second team. It's just a nitpick, really. That's all that I have for that. And I mean, another thing that I should mention, Anthony Edwards now received a huge incentive for making an All-NBA team, which is like, it's really good for him and really good for the next person that's on the third team that I'll get to in a minute. I'm just trying to see exactly how much. Yes, he's going to receive an extra $41 million to his rookie extension for making the All-NBA team, which is, again, very, very impressive. And moving on down from this list, we have the All-NBA third team. Obviously, the glorious king is on an All-NBA team. He now becomes the youngest and the oldest player to make an All-NBA team. Because when he was 20 years old, he made an All-NBA team. And now that he's pushing 40, he's made an All-NBA team yet again. Now, Halliburton being on this list is, in my opinion, a little bit controversial. He got more votes than Devin Booker, despite the fact that Halliburton didn't really play that well throughout the second half of the season. And the fact that he was able to get more votes than Devin Booker, something is fishy. Something is going on, and I genuinely do not like it. And I am not a big fan of Halliburton whatsoever. And I mean, good props to him for making the All-NBA third team, because similar to Anthony Edwards, now he's going to get a huge incentive boost because of his rookie extension with $41 million. So that's good for him. Sabonis, who wasn't on the All-Star team, has made the All-NBA third team. A lot of people are questioning like why he's on the list if he wasn't an All-Star. I'm not questioning it whatsoever because, in my personal opinion, I knew for a fact that he got snubbed. Like, I know and everyone knows that he should have been on an All-Star team, but he wasn't. And I mean, I guess this is sort of like, a reward for him because, he gets recognized for being super good. But I mean, it's about time. It's about time for him to be recognized for being super good. And I really don't have any problems with everyone else that's in the third team, aside from Tyrese Halliburton. And I feel like there could have been. I mean, you could have definitely put De'Aaron Fox on this list aside from Halliburton, who was consistent throughout a majority of the season, as opposed to Halliburton, who was consistent for mainly just the first half of the NBA season. But that's really like all that I have to say about this segment. And the list is solid. Again, the only real problem that I have is Jalen Brunson being on the second team as opposed to being on the first team. But other than that, really nothing else that needs to be talked about. So with that, I'm going to end off with the second segment. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Before I end off, here is a fun fact. So with this All-NBA first-team selection coming in from Luka Dončić, he now has more first-team selections than Stephen Curry, Nikola Jokic, Dirk, Chris Paul, Bill Russell, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, Allen Iverson, and even Dwayne Wade. He has more he has more first team selections than all of those Hall of Famers, which is amazing in my opinion. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys think that Luka is going to be better than all of these players on this list, if he's not better than Steph, or if he's not better than D Wade or AI or any of those other comments that you have towards Luka and the rest of the stars that I just mentioned. But with that, I'm going to end off on the second segment, and we are going to go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk about Cavs drama yet again. So I will be right back after this break, so just give me a second and stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I apologize for that longer than normal wait. I needed to get a drink. I was incredibly parched, but other than that, let's go right ahead and get into the third segment, where we're going to talk about more Cavs drama, because, I mean, the drama around the Cavs this so far in the offseason, I mean, the playoffs aren't even over, and there's already drama brewing all over Cleveland. I don't think I've talked about Cleveland this much since LeBron was on Cleveland, and that feels like a very, very long time ago, to me, at least. So, where do I even begin? All right, so the Cleveland Cavaliers, they recently fired their coach, and again, like, I mean, this is crazy to me, because it's like, I mean, well, not really crazy, I should say. I mean, the head coach for Cleveland, he wasn't really all that. His record in the regular season and his tenure on the Cavs was 170 to 159, and he was 6-11 in the postseason with the Cavs. So, not really obviously he has a negative record in the postseason, but his regular season record is somewhat mid. Like, it's not really outstanding, if that makes sense. And one of the biggest headlines that I saw, and then I'm looking at an article right now, is that Donovan Mitchell, and like according to an NBA insider, several NBA insiders, Joe Vardon, Shams Charania, and Jason Lloyd of the Athletic, they are saying that Donovan Mitchell didn't have great confidence in JB Bickerstaff as the Cleveland Cavs coach for the future. And it's like, when your star player has a problem with the head coach and doesn't really believe in him, obviously that is a big problem. Like, that is a very, very big problem for the organization. And I'm very surprised with how quickly they responded to the problem. I mean, they realized they realized that, okay, Donovan Mitchell doesn't like him, let's get rid of him. So, from the way I see it, it would seem like with this move, that the Cavs are going to be leaning on trying to sign Donovan Mitchell and getting rid of Darius Garland. I mean, but that's just my speculation. So I'm just looking at a quote from Vardon. Like, this is what they wrote. Though Cleveland improved under Bickerstaff, his team scuffled after the All-Star break in each of the last 3 seasons. Also, and perhaps most importantly, Cavs star Donovan Mitchell, among other players, did not have great confidence in Bickerstaff as a coach for the future. Numerous league sources have said for most of the season. So, the big question for me is, who could those other players be? I mean, because if the other players is reference to Darius Garland, then maybe my statement is just completely null and void. Like, maybe he really is a bad coach and he doesn't have any faith in clearly, if Donovan Mitchell doesn't like him and there's multiple players that don't really have much confidence in him as a coach, then it makes total sense to get rid of him. But my biggest, the big theory that I have in my head is that they're definitely going to try and pursue Donovan Mitchell over Darius Garland. And the reason why is because, Donovan Mitchell, obviously being the star player on the team, is not a fan of their head coach. And so the Cavs respond to that by firing the head coach. Meaning they're sort of trying to cater to Donovan Mitchell the best way that they can to ensure that he stays on the roster and to ensure that he decides to sign the extension with Cleveland. So that's the way I see it. However, if this is not just a Donovan Mitchell problem, but it's a whole team problem and everyone doesn't really like him, then that just might make my statement null and void. Because if everyone is agreeing that they don't really have confidence with him being the coach, why wouldn't the Cavs fire him? Why wouldn't they fire him? That's my thinking behind it, and it doesn't really seem like there's enough evidence to conclude exactly what the Cavs are going to try to do with, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland within the offseason. We'll see. So, the Cavaliers president, Kobe Altman, admonished Bickerstaff in front of his entire staff for playing Mitchell heavy minutes against the Houston Rockets on December 18th, per The Athletic. This is what The Athletic is saying. And in his second season in Cleveland, Mitchell averaged 26 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, while shooting 46% from the field and 36% from 3, along with 86% from the free throw line. And the Cavs, they had a pretty good record, 48-34. And they also defeated the Orlando Magic, like I mentioned previously. So it's not like he didn't do anything for the organization. It's just he didn't really do enough. And they lost to the Celtics in the second round after 5 games. And Mitchell, he turns 28 in December. He missed Game 4 and Game 5 due to a left hamstring injury, which is going to also play into a factor like what happens in the offseason. I mean, will the Cavs allow Mitchell to sort of rest that hamstring and get better? I mean, we have no idea how long it's going to take for him to recover from that, and it shouldn't take that long, but depending on how he returns back from his injury, we'll have to see. He's also known for scoring a career high 71 points last season, so I really wouldn't be surprised if they try to just get him back. It would make total sense to me. And being one of the top scorers in the NBA, again, just makes sense to pick him over somebody like Darius Garland. And I'm very surprised that Darius Garland even feels like he has a chance to combat against Donovan Mitchell. Like, he should just request a trade right now. Now, let's see. If he chooses not to sign the extension with the Cavs, then the thought is that Cleveland is going to look to trade him before free agency in the summer of 2025. So, if Mitchell becomes a free agent, he's eligible to sign a max of 5 years and $269.9 million with the team that holds his rights, the Cleveland Cavaliers right now, or 4 years for $200.1 million with a new team. So those are the the opportunities that he has. So he's now going to have to weigh his options and to decide exactly what team he's going to want to be a part of. And I don't really see him not signing that extension. But then again, if the Cavs, if they get sort of worse in the offseason, I wouldn't really be surprised if that's the angle that they go about it. And I mean, again, I just genuinely wouldn't really be that surprised at the angle that they go about it, just because of where he stands and how good of a player that he is. They have to pursue him. They have to, because if they don't pursue him, then a team like let's see here, just 1 second. I do have a list of these. I mean, several teams could have a very good chance of trying to get him, like the Miami Heat or the Lakers. They could 100% try and get Donovan Mitchell. I mean, for the Lakers, it seems less of a possibility simply because, a more realistic option for the Lakers would be Trae Young, and as opposed to Donovan Mitchell. And the Miami Heat, I have a feeling the Miami Heat with Donovan Mitchell, that would be a very spectacular show to watch. You'll have Jimmy Butler as well as Donovan Mitchell, a scoring option along with a two-way option along with Bam Adebayo as well. That sounds like a very dangerous combination. And what would make it even more ironic is because, remember how LeBron decided to take his talents to South Beach after losing to the Boston Celtics? Donovan Mitchell could do the exact same thing. It would be the craziest parallel in the history of basketball. It would be so funny to me. And what would be even funnier is if he announces, literally word for word, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat. Like how LeBron did, announcing his decision on that infamous day that Cavs fans reap and rule and cannot stand. So that's really all I have for this, for the drama. I'm sure the drama is far from over with the Cavs, so expect me to talk about them a little bit later. So in this next segment, in the fourth segment, we're going to talk about Luka Dončić and the possibility of him signing a ridiculous contract with the Dallas Mavericks after making the All-NBA first team, again, for I believe it is the 5th time. So I will be right back after this short break, and be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about Luka Dončić and his potential contract extension, because now, since he's made the an All NBA team and the All NBA first team for that matter, he becomes eligible for a Supermax. Now, this is no ordinary Supermax. This is a crazy amount of money. Like, the number is insane to me. So, he's now eligible for a 5-year, $346 million Supermax extension. This is going to be the largest contract in NBA history for now, until, the salary cap goes up again and somebody else makes more money than Luka Dončić. But the final year of the contract, if he does sign it, would be in 2030 and 2031, and that will give the Mavs, like literally in the last season, that will give Luka Dončić $78.82 million in 1 year. And somebody did the math to this, and this is equivalent to making $960,000 per game. That is almost $1 million in just 48 minutes of playing basketball. That is insane. That is ridiculous. That is a lot of money. That is, obviously for Luka Dončić, like, that is incredibly well deserved, especially like with his talent and how good of a player he is. And don't even get me started if he wins a championship. Oh my gosh, he has a very good window to win the championship right now. If he wins it and then signs this Supermax extension, the sky is the limit for this man. Like, it's incredible. So, like, his salary cap is literally going to pale in comparison with the contracts that star players will sign over the next 5 years. And now you're probably wondering, why is he getting so much money now? Like, where did all this money come from? So, the NBA, there are reports that surfaced about the NBA agreeing to a $7 billion plus dollars per season. The media rights agreement with ESPN/ABC, NBC, and Amazon Sportico's Keith Smith projected the league's salary cap is going to eclipse $200 million by the 2028 and 29 season. Now, this is the reason why, like, you hear a lot of people and a lot of NBA fans say that the salary cap is just a myth, simply because it's like every single year, like, the Supermax extension turns out to be just, more money than the previous years. And it's like, again, they're all just saying that the salary cap is just a myth. Literally just because, like, the contracts, they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It was only like 10 years ago where people would go crazy for someone signing $100 million for like 3 years or something like that. Like, people would go crazy over that kind of money. And not to mention, a lot of these NBA players, they didn't, like, back in the day, the contracts weren't this gigantic. And it's swayed people, the wrong way, and it's also swayed people the right way in a sense, because there are certain players, like, for example, a really good example is actually Jaylen Brown, who's making so much money, and he's the most paid player on his team, yet he's not even the best player on his team, because, a majority of people think Jason Tatum is the best player on the team. And speaking of Jaylen Brown, he wasn't selected for an All-NBA team, which I find rather insulting, especially considering how good the Boston Celtics were as a team. He was the second option, so he should definitely be on the All-NBA third team at least. He should have replaced Tyrese Halliburton, in my personal opinion. But other than that, aside from that, these contracts, they're massive now. They're completely different than what they were before. And the player who signed a Supermax extension because of the salary cap increase, a player who signed a Supermax in 2028 would make approximately $95 million in the 5th year of a $419 million contract, which is ridiculous. It's a lot of money, and it's really, really difficult to understand. And because it's like all of those zeros in just one season, or like in just a couple of years. That's insane. And so this would equate to, I mean, if the salary cap continues like to go in the projected direction that this analyst is looking at it, then this would equate to a player earning $1.15 million per game on salary, not including the postseason. And so, like, Keith Smith, and, like, again, this is just crazy. Like, the amount of money that is projected. Because, like, Keith Smith, he tweeted this out. The NBA getting $7 billion per year for media rights will likely lock a 10% cap growth. That is, the max cap can go up. That is the max the cap can go up, is what he's saying. And per season, starting in 2025 and 2026. And if so, the cap will top $200 million in the 2028-29 season. A 35% max salary that year projects to be $72 million, which ironically was Kobe's max extension at one point that he signed with the Lakers. And, like, you know, his supermax extension that he signed with the Lakers, which is, again, it's kind of astonishing to me just how far we've come to where all of these athletes are getting so much money and they're getting paid all of this bread. And it's amazing to me. I mean, so next is, like, the NBA salary cap increased by approximately 10% each season. It benefits future star players who earn from the supermax threshold. Again, this is just a lot of money. I mean, like, I can't even comprehend how much money this man is going to make off of a contract alone. I mean, and not to mention endorsements, commercials, playoff incentives, all NBA incentives, all of these things that are going to go straight to Luka. That is a lot of money. Like, it's crazy how much money he's going to be making. But that's essentially all that I have on this segment talking about Luka and his own money. And I mean, congrats to him, and like the possibility of him signing this crazy max extension. If he does, because like I keep saying signing, but like it's still not decided whether or not he's going to sign that or not. But as an NBA player, and as, like, you know, a smart human being and an individual, like, why wouldn't you sign this contract? Like, why wouldn't you sign this crazy contract? You could be making more money than anyone in the NBA could even dream of. Like, you have to sign this contract. It's like they're begging you to sign this contract. And if he refuses, that would be absolutely insane. But I don't really think he's going to refuse that contract, especially with all the money that he would be making. I mean, obviously, like, you know, it's not all about the money, but you also have to consider Luka Dončić's age. I mean, he's not getting any younger, obviously, but he's still a relatively young player where he doesn't need to feel that incentive to ring chase just yet. And it's like, you make the money now, and that way you can use that money for the future, and, you know, it'll put you in a much better spot. That makes sense. So that's what I think is going to happen. I would be incredibly surprised if Luka doesn't take the max and just, you know, he decides to go somewhere else. I doubt that will happen, though, but it's still a possibility, so we always have to consider both options. But with that, we are out of time for this fourth segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the fifth segment, where I talk about DeMar DeRozan and some of the things that he has to say about the Raptors trading him all the way back in 2018, 2019, before the pandemic and before life became a problem for everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that right after this short break, so stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to talk about DeMar DeRozan and some of the things that he had to say on the podcast, or on a podcast, about him, the Raptors trading him all the way back in 2018-2019. So I'll give you the quote, and then I'll sort of explain the backstory behind this quote and, you know, the big problems and like this, that, and the other. So the trade effed me up. This is quote, the trade effed me up. Toronto was the place I wanted to be. Kobe's my favorite player. I wanted to play on one team. I just couldn't beat Bron. And that year when I got traded, LeBron goes to LA. So it was like, the man I couldn't beat is gone. Please give me one more chance. End quote. Now, this is like, after like hearing this, and like, I mean, when DeMar got traded, I'll explain the whole trade scenario and the reason why he got traded. So, from 2015 all the way to 2018, LeBron would make the Eastern Conference Finals and win the Eastern Conference Finals every single year. Every single year from 2015 to 2018, he would win every single year. And this is just on Cleveland, right? And the Raptors, they were a very, very good team. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, they made a name for themselves in Toronto, and they put Toronto on the map. But every single time they went up against the Cavs, they would lose. LeBron wiped the floor with all of them. LeBron, like, if you think the Celtics are LeBron's doormat, then the Raptors were the door. Like, that's essentially how it was when LeBron was the king of the East in, like, for the longest time. And so he made a name for himself. And, well, the Raptors, they sort of made a name for himself. And in 2016, I believe, that was when they first played LeBron that was when they first played LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals. And it was a really competitive series. I believe the series when it ended up going 4-2, and with LeBron winning and the Cavs winning and moving on to the finals. So that happens. Then in the next year, they play the Toronto Raptors again. Now, DeMar DeRozan is coming off of, this is 2017, DeMar DeRozan is coming off of a near MVP season. And he was averaging like 28 points per game, and he was a phenomenal scorer, and his game and, you know, his style, it reminds me of Kobe when I was looking at it, because he took a lot of mid-range shots, and he, like, you know, he barely takes the three-pointers, and his shot selection and his mid-range shot is like, it's butter. It is straight cash most of the time. But when Cleveland played against him, they got swept. So the Raptors got swept in 2017. And to be fair, I mean, like, almost every team that either the Golden State or the Cavs went up against got swept. It was really no challenge for either one of those teams in the postseason, especially against the Celtics. I mean, LeBron practically owned the Celtics for 8 years, it seems like. And so that happens, and obviously, like, you know, the Cavs were just a much better team. Like, they had Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, and Kevin Love, along with the pretty solid Cavs roster with J.R. Smith and Tristan Thompson filling in the rest of those spots. And, you know, they just had the better team. Makes total sense. 2018 happens, and now the Raptors are the 1 seed. Now, them getting the 1 seed is a little bit, inflated to the fact that towards the final stint of their season, they played some of the worst teams in the NBA at the time, and that pushed them to get to the number 1 seed. But aside from that, they were still the number 1 seed. Cleveland had just come off of trading Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics and then trading away practically their entire roster, blowing it up, which was full of veterans like Isaiah Thomas, Derrick Rose, Dwayne Wade. I bet you guys completely forgot that D Wade was on the Cavs at one point. And again, blew up the entirety of the roster, literally almost mid-season, before the trade deadline, and had to deal with a whole new lineup with LeBron at center. And this seemed like the year for the Raptors to win, or to at least take the series to 7 games. They get swept again. And thus begins the birth of LeBronto James. Another nickname for LeBron because of how badly he owned the Raptors. He had more points than DeMar and Kyle Lowry, and almost just as many assists as DeMar and Kyle Lowry combined in that series. Every single series that he would go up against them, he would own them. And every single time, DeMar would be a fraction of a player that he would be. And obviously, like, this was a big problem. And I should have seen this coming, like, in 2018, because it took them 6 games to beat the Wizards. And the Wizards that year had 3 less wins than the Nuggets, who didn't even make the playoffs that year. Yeah, kind of bad. But aside from that, then LeBron decides to leave the Cavs to go to LA. The one obstacle that the Raptors couldn't get past is now gone, meaning this paves the way perfectly for them. But due to, I'm assuming, like, again, I don't want to like draw any kind of bad speculations, but I'm assuming that the front office, they didn't want to take any chances with this opportunity, which thus like compelled them to trade DeMar for the monster that Kawhi Leonard is. And it proved to be incredibly effective, unfortunately for DeMar. And it must have been really, really hard for like DeMar to see that. I mean, like, he immediately gets traded, and then the second he gets traded, they win the championship. That definitely must have damaged his psyche a lot, because it's like, was it me? Was I the problem? Like, was I really holding this team back? But I feel like it's a combination of him, like, you know, holding the team back, and just Kawhi being on a completely different level in the postseason compared to everyone else. Like, that postseason run that he had was astonishing. In fact, it was so astonishing that it's the main reason why people think he's better than LeBron, which is, boils my heart. It just boils my mind. I just cannot stand it. But aside from that, it was really tough story for DeMar, because it's like, again, I would have thought they would have at least given him one more chance. But then again, getting Kawhi, I wouldn't pass up on that opportunity whatsoever. And again, it went well. As unfortunate as it is, it went well. Now, as you guys can see, based on like my opinions, I agreed with the trade, like 100%. I'm not a DeMar DeRozan hater, like, whatsoever, but his play in, like, when the lights get brighter, it's not the same. And I'm sorry, but that cannot be a reliable first option. If you do not elevate yourself when it really matters, then you're not a viable first option. And I totally understand why the Raptors wanted to trade him, but I also understand, like, you know, the loyalty aspect of like what DeMar wanted. And, like, you know, he was sort of expecting the Raptors to give him, like, one more chance to, like, you know, maybe try to make it all the way and win it all. But I do also understand the Raptors' perspective, because after LeBron left, in their minds, they were like, okay, now there is absolutely zero excuse for us to not win the title. And they had to make sure they could do everything in their power to be able to win it. And getting Kawhi Leonard was by far the best option. Without a doubt, the best option. Now, Unfortunately, it came at a price for, giving up one of the franchise's most beloved players. Like, I know, sorry to say, and it's really sad to say, but you gotta do what you gotta do, and the end result could not have been better. It could not have been better. And that's really, if they didn't win the championship, then yes, that would have been seen as, then I would have had very different opinions on this move. But it's the fact that they were able to win the second that DeMar leaves. All power to him. Power move play. Incredibly smart. Genius. And it helped them out in the end. So, in a way, he did help the Raptors win their first championship. In a way. But aside from that, that's the end of the 5th segment, and therefore that's the end of the show. So thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. For more content and updates, as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. It is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. That's all I have for you today on this podcast. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.